Started. Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Diaz, president and founder of Larry Jacob Internet Marketing, and I'm bringing you another episode of Transforming Small Business Thinking. This week, or this episode, I've got Steve Logreira here. He's my guest. Steve, thanks you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, George.
So Steve is someone that went to the same high school that I went to, but I found out in Arizona. We were in a meeting and someone says, hey, you got to talk to this guy because he used to live in Miami. And we started talking. We ended up going to the same high school. So talk about a small world. And he lives, of course, in Vancouver. I live in Miami. So we're far apart. But we have, marketing, automation in our blood. We've both been in a lot of this space. And recently, Stephen introduced me to a sales process solution that he's got. And I think it's really good because, I'm focused on marketing. How do you get those leads? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I get this lead, I got a hot lead, or maybe I have a not so hot lead. What do we do with it? And that's the space that Steven's kind of started covering. And he's a great guy to have talk about that. So Steve, tell us why you got started in this thing.
It's interesting because for as you said, we've been in marketing and marketing automation for many, many years. So I was building marketing funnels, webinar funnels, anything to do with digital marketing and getting leads. And then oddly enough, I started working with a gentleman by the name of Dan Locke, who teaches people how to do high-ticket sales. High-ticket sales, basically, if you have any program or service that's over $2,500, you can consider it high ticket, and typically requires that you have a conversation and you close them on the phone.
As opposed to like selling them something $200.
Yeah, as opposed to they just go to sales page, they hit buy now, and then they get whatever it is that they purchased.
Right. So this guy was talking about stuff that's above 2,500, which very few people have mastered selling it without at least having some sort of conversation on a phone call.
Yeah, exactly. And basically what he taught is how, the whole how to have that sales conversation, building rapport, looking at what the challenges are, looking at what solutions they provide, and then what we call bridging the gap, so that the whatever product or service you're selling is going to solve their problem.
Gotcha.
Right. But typically when you're selling something that's 3, 5, even 25, I've seen programs as high as $50,000, right? Nobody's going to buy from a sales page. Right. That requires having a conversation with somebody, and maybe more than one phone call. Right. It could be a series of phone calls. So I was working with Dan. We built the original funnel. He brought out this course called High Ticket Closer. It was a 7-week course, and I was part of the marketing team that we put the funnel together, the marketing together, and launched it. And Dan happens to be local here. I live in Vancouver, Canada right now, all the way from Miami, as you said. And go Canes. I had to throw that in.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to close. And I'm one of those people, I'm a really firm believer in, the old saying, knowledge is power. That's not true. Applied knowledge is power. You learn something, you go and apply it. So as an experiment, just one of those things that you're like, let me go try this thing, right? So I ended up getting a part-time job with selling for a coach. So I was doing, in the mornings, I was working on my digital marketing business, and in the afternoons I was selling for the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And their marketing was pretty dialed in. They were generating 20 to 25 leads a week, and I was managing those with a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Right. So imagine 100 leads, and we track these monthly. Imagine 100 to 110 leads in a spreadsheet, and the ones that you close on the first time, it's great. It's a yes. You onboard them, great, good to go. Right. Then there's the people that say no, and actually in sales, no is actually a good thing because it doesn't take up your mental energy anymore. There's not a fit, the client's not interested, great. But what about all those maybes?
Yeah.
Right? Follow up with me in a week. Follow up with me in a month. Right? I need to talk to my wife, talk to my husband. I need to, whatever it is, there's a real maybe, or like I said, it's a genuine, good objection. It's interesting how many people never follow up with that person. Right. I'll give you an example in my personal life. I was actually taught. I gave a presentation the other night, and I gave this example. I play in a softball team, and last year, at the beginning of the season, one of the girls on my team is an insurance agent, and she does house calls. She'll actually come to your house, bring you the paperwork, do other things so you can get your insurance done. And my insurance didn't reset until October, right? And this is someone I know. This is someone that I trust. Like it was a no-brainer, yes, for sure, right? So I said to her, follow up with me in October. Never heard from her, right? Because this happened somewhere in April, and she didn't have any kind of system to follow up, right? So going back to the coaches, I'm keeping track of this in a spreadsheet. I'm getting really clear that that's not working. Because
you get overwhelmed by the data.
It's not just that. It's like if I want to follow up with somebody, right? I have to open up the spreadsheet, cut the email, open up my Outlook, paste it in there. Typically, I usually like to have like copy already on some kind of a text file, right? So if I send out similar emails, I already have the copy written. So then I'd have to open up the text file, cut and paste. And I mean, at the end of the day, I actually averaged it out, and I was spending about 30 minutes per lead.
So on leads that may or may not close.
Yeah, may or may not, just 30 minutes altogether with all the things that I did, pre-call, because I would send them an email with some some videos and stuff like that. So by the time I got on the phone with them, they'd be even more familiar with the coaches. So there was a lot of things that I did, and I averaged it out. It was about 30 minutes. Now multiply that by times 20, 25, sometimes 30 leads a week.
Yeah, those are full-time.
Right, that's a few hours, right? So I said, so I'm like, man, I gotta do something about this. And in a previous business, I had done something similar, also using a CRM. I used to be in real estate, and I figured out a way to cut a process that took about 4 hours to put together in less than one. So I said, how do I make this better? So I started looking for a CRM that would fit my needs, and then
I mean, if you're not familiar, CRM is a customer relationship management system, something to manage your database of people.
Yeah, just to manage your customer relationship. So keeping all the relevant information, notes,
their emails that they send you,
tasks, things like that. Correct. But one of the things I've always been privy to, especially in this space, is that sometimes those all-in-one solutions tend to be not so good, right? So I started looking first for an all-in-one solution. I couldn't find one, and being sort of the nerd that I am, I'm like, well, there's this thing out there called Zapier. Zapier is basically an app, sort of a glue, sort of a bridge between two applications,
right,
that sends data from one thing to the other. And I might be getting a little too technical, but that's kind of like how my brain thinks. But it was always about making things easier, right? So I came up,
and the reason Zapier comes into play is because instead of having one all-in-one solution, if you have best-of-breed solutions in different parts of this, Zapier allows you to glue them together.
Exactly, and it's just like, and then it really works as one system, right? Because everything is still managed from the from the CRM, right? And one of the things about automation is that really what it's meant to do, it's not meant to fully automate the sales process, because I get a lot of people say it's going to be too robotic, it's not going to be personal enough. I'm not talking about automation like you do in marketing, where you're sending a bunch of stuff and seeing what sticks. With the sales automation, there's still a very personalized part of it, but really what you're doing is finding ways to cut 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 5 minutes there, right? At the end of the week, you've saved yourself quite a few hours, right? So for my case, after I put the system together, I went from 30 minutes to less than 5 minutes.
Okay, so big improvement.
Yeah. So then it became manageable,
Yeah,
I knew exactly.
And by the way, you're talking about saving time, but I mean, what interested me in your solution, in addition to the saving time, is now I can be more effective because I can, I can pile my people up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these guys are really hot, and frankly, no one ever forgets about the hot ones because if you're good in sales, you're going to get to those. But it's those people in the middle that you're not sure what can you do to keep up with those people without having that overwhelm you time-wise, right?
Yeah, just like the example I gave you. I mean, I talked to that girl in I think it was June or July.
Yeah, and there was a
And
sale.
I was ready to, there was a sale like one, talk about like, slam dunk, right? And she completely dropped the ball, right? The other thing that happened was not only did I cut my, my admin work time in down to 5 minutes, I also tripled my sales.
There you go.
Because I had a process and I knew exactly what to do every step of the way.
Sweet.
Because here's the thing, and this is, this is true for any type of business. If you don't know exactly what to do every step of the way, you're going to fail. And if you have a team, if you have employees, if you work with a team, if everybody's not on the same, imagine if you have 10 people working with you and nobody's on the same page.
Well, and here's the thing. You have one really good sales guy. That's good just because he has that innate process for doing it, but you can't hire the second one, the third one, because there's no set process, right?
Yeah, yeah. And whether you realize this or not, just as human beings, we always create some type of process because the human brain thinks in patterns, right? Problem is when the pattern is not exactly the same, that's when you get into trouble. And knowing what to do next, and knowing what to do in any situation. I'm a huge softball fan, and one of the analogies I give is, I play third base, right? And before the ball comes to me, and even if you're not a baseball fan, just think about this: before the ball, if I'm sitting there waiting for the batter to hit, and if I don't know what to do with that ball if it comes to me, I'm going to make an error.
Right.
But when I'm sitting there waiting for the ball, if I know exactly what I'm going to do next, whether I'm going to touch third base or I'm going to throw to second or I'm going to tag somebody out, chances are I'm not going to make a mistake, right? So in business, it's the same thing. If you know exactly what to do. So for example, you're out networking, right? And this is a big one. And how many of you out there watching this video have a stack of business cards that you've never followed up with?
Oh, yeah. And you walk by people's desk and you see a big stack of business cards, which eventually just goes into a drawer because they're embarrassed, and then eventually goes into the trash can.
Yep, and eventually ends up in the circular file, right? Yeah, and if you don't know what to do, if you don't have a process of what to do with that business card, then it's going to end up, and that's a potential lost sale.
Well, and none of that, but why bother going networking if you're just going to collect cards and then they're just going to collect dust, right?
Yeah, and the biggest reason is that, again, then this is where automation comes in, because, for example, with my system, if I get a business card, I take a picture of it, it automatically goes into my CRM, and then I know exactly what to do. I have a process. And here's the thing: the process has nothing to do with technology or any kind of platform. It just has to do with what happens next, right? So I get a business card, then I'm going to send them an email, right? And then maybe in the third email is just, second email is just to kind of, talk a little bit, introduce each other. Third email, I'm going to send them a link to my calendar, right? And I also have a little questionnaire. I have the 3 or 4 question little form that I ask them questions. But here's the thing: that data goes into my CRM. So again, I never typed the person's name, their email, right? They did it, or the app did it.
Well, and by the way, what a lot of people don't realize is, a lot of people think in sales process that you sound intelligent by telling people everything you know about what you know. And what really makes you look intelligent is asking questions that only someone who knew the topic really well would know to ask. Because in other person's mind, it's like, dude, I wouldn't have even known to ask those questions. And the thing is that helps them see that you listen, you're in tune. And then, by the way, you can start addressing their objections and their needs before they really even share those specific needs with you, because they're just answering questions.
Yeah.
So,
and you just described, a sales conversation, and the process is sort of the glue that puts all of this together.
Cool. So let's tell you what. Let's do this. I think this was a great introduction. What I'd like to do is, we're running out of time. Let's stop, and then we'll continue the conversation and get into your solution, because I think if people can see it, it'll really come alive as how that helps them, how that can help them become more effective. What do you think?
Sure.
Cool. So let me just sign off on this one. Thank you, Steve, for joining us, and we'll continue with part 2.
Okay, thank you.